Chief Operating Officer for Zamara and as the acting MD for Zamara, which was formerly Alexander Forbes. Prior to that, she was also the Director of Market Research, Market Supervision at Capital Markets Authority. So Miriam has a unique blend in how she views the capital markets in Uganda. She's an accomplished lawyer and an author as well. Recently, she co-authored a book on pension funds in East Africa with the World Bank. So that's going to be quite informative. Miriam is also a facilitator on pension schemes across the world. She's facilitated a couple of workshops in the UK and across Africa, Botswana, Malawi, you name it. So we're very pleased to have Miriam here to just give us that perspective that only the regulator and from a legal, regulatory and compliance angle can give us. Welcome, Miriam.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gladys.
All right, then moving on to our next panelist, Joyce Nkini-Iwisi. Joyce, karibu sana. Joyce is the principal director. She's a principal at Control Risks. She's the principal in charge of the Africa Forensics Practice for Control Risks, heading investigations and forensic accounting, as well as forensic technology. Joyce is based out of Johannesburg, but she is proudly East African. Prior to joining Control Risks, Joyce had quite a bit of experience in law firms looking at investigations, as well as part of the top 4 firms, both PwC and EY in investigations. So Joyce has over 15 years experience conducting investigations and forensic accounting engagements across Africa, Europe, the Americas, and Asia. She is a fraud risk management professional, and she also acquired her MBA in international business at Coventry University in 2010. Joyce was recognized as one of the top 50 women in management Africa and in 2019, and in 2021, she received an award recognized as one of East Africa's women leaders. So we're quite happy to have you here with us, Joyce, to give us that perspective from a forensic investigation angle. And for those who are wondering what forensic investigation is, we will be sharing Joyce's details later for you to find out. Our third panelist, karibu Joyce. Our third panelist is Arthur Opio, and Arthur works with the Directorate of ICT Support at Makerere University. He is the end user support administrator. He's been with Makerere University Directorate of ICT Support for over 10 years. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and recently graduated with a master's of computer science majoring in security. He is an enthusiastic cybersecurity pastor or evangelist. And if you follow him on Twitter, you will see him consistently posting tips on cybersecurity as well as personal finance and personal investment. We would like to thank you all for joining us this evening as we delve into this topic, and we look forward to having you participate and learning from this to invest wisely going forward. So as we kick off this discussion to the panelists and to the audience as well, we're going to run a poll. We just want to find out how many people have been victims of an investment scam. Joyce, I'd like my panelists to just pitch in as the audience votes as well.
Almost. I was an almost victim. Like you, I realized by delaying to invest. Actually, just I invested, but we'll discuss pyramid schemes and Ponzi schemes. So I invested, and then there was a period that they gave, like a 1 month, where you could withdraw. So within that period, I withdrew. But then a year later, we're sitting with several of my friends and family who lost a lot of money in the scheme. So I was an almost victim. I would say, I think 60% of a victim.
At least you were able to recover something. Miriam, over to you.
You don't ask regulators such questions. I suggest you move swiftly to Arthur. But I'll just say that by association, when my husband and I, when we were still dating, there was this thing called gifted circles. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but at that time we were at university. And he was the one working, he was the one with the money. And so a friend of mine came with this amazing idea of the gifted circles, how many people had put their money in. Poor me, I had no money. He had the money and he put it in. And just after he put it in, the circle burst and he lost everything. So that was painful. Yeah.
All right. All right. So as the poll, we should be closing the poll in the next minute. So please vote, please vote. And I would like to go and just ask Arthur, as someone who is always talking about personal finance and is always looking at opportunities to make money, please share your experience with us. Have you been a victim of an investment scam?
Thank you, Gladys. Good evening, panelists and all the listeners. Yes, I have been a victim before, and it goes way back to 2008 when I just finished university. At the time, it was a scam or a scheme called Quest. And one of the things that really played on us was, we were desperate from university. And at that time, many of us wanted to make money on the go, and we wanted to make it quickly. And our curiosity got the best of us, so we were kind of scammed. Now it did not stop there. There is another time this whole thing called Telex Free came around, and Telex Free also got the best of us. It just reminded me of how a person scammed my friend and I when we bought land. We ideally bought air, so that is how the scam was. We kind of believed the story. It was so weaved so well that many of our friends and colleagues were doing the thing. But before we got back some of our money, just like a week or 2 weeks into it, it closed. And boom, we were scammed. So I've been a victim before, and it's so annoying that many times it's the people that ideally, put you into these things. And it really stems down to the fact that many of them are also very naive, and they have rejected knowledge about some of these things. Thank you.
True.
All right. Thank you, Arthur, for sharing that. And that's so true, because most of the times it's someone you know and you trust who gets you, they're excited, and you also just believe them, and you want to be part of the success stories. No one wants to be left behind. At this point, let me quickly have a look at the poll results. Let's just quickly have a look at the poll results. Oh yes, I see I see quite a few people talking about BLQ. We'll go into that. So what do we have here? 20% yes, many times, serial investors, 20%, then 33% yes, but getting burnt once was more than enough. Then 31%, oh, lucky for you, you were nearly scammed, but you served. And 15%, sure, I'm too careful. Do you not want to make money? But 15% is a good enough. It's a very good representation, because all of us are always looking out for opportunities. So it doesn't make you any less of a person if you've been scammed before, because trust me, someone is always planning for your money, even as you're planning for it yourself. So thank you for participating in the poll. Thank you for participating in the poll. So final results, 20% yes, especially you serial investors, 34% you learned your lesson, 31% you dodged, 15% are the careful ones. But yes, so thank you for participating in this. So Arthur gave a few examples as to why, as to his experience. But I'd like you, Arthur, just to go into a bit more detail on why do you think why do you think these schemes, we had BLQ in Uganda last year, and I was completely oblivious about BLQ until I was stopped by a security guard who saw me advertising Zeno, and he said, "Are you like BLQ?" I said, "BLQ, what is that? It's not one of the licensed firms. So what is BLQ?" So he educated me. And it was a group of all these people who worked together and just kept putting money into this scheme. So I heard about BLQ, and I see that some of our audience, some of the participants were victim to BLQ. But even before BLQ, earlier in the year, there was charge after. In Masaka, there was that one as well. You've heard of Quest as well. There's AIM Global. And they seem to target, as you said, university. Something always happens to people at university. I don't know if it's the exuberance of youth or being hopeful. So Arthur, why do you think this happens? Why do schemes take root so quickly? Such scams, fraudulent schemes and scams take root.
Thank you, Gladys. To start this, the first thing that comes to mind is that there is a willing population to be scammed. I think there is quite a number of people who, first of all, I think lack knowledge about many of these things, or they have rejected knowledge about some of these things, because you'll find Ugandans who will say that, you know what, I would rather first get some money before, things backfire. We have that thing of, let me first try. And that plays a very big role in ensuring that, these scams continue to go on. Then number two, we have a very desperate populace. And to me, I think where there is desperation, there are people who are willing to do anything to make money. And this means that someone will not even do prior research to ensure that what they are getting into is actually right or legitimate. And in my cyber world, we've seen over time how people click, rogue links just because curiosity rest of them. And they've been told that you've won an iPhone. So someone really believes that, and they're like, I've been desperately waiting to have an iPhone, and it goes like that. So to me, those three major things, a willing populace, desperation, and then people who reject knowledge about some of these things. There are people you tell over and over that, these are scams. Actually, just a week before BLQ closed, a friend of mine had told me, join this thing. I told him, anything that is too good to be true is just a put off for me. And I told them, why don't you go the organic way? We've been singing these songs about, having the right kind of investments, but someone was like, no, I'm making my money. And boom, they lost all their money.
Thanks, Arthur. That's so true. I keep hearing that there are people who go into it knowing that, yes, it's fraudulent, but how quickly can they get their money out, And then they're the clever ones. They're the clever ones. They bring in more people, but they get out earlier. So it's quite interesting because the personal motivation for doing a lot of those things, getting involved in a scheme is usually based on greed or fear of missing out on something. Joyce, I'd like to ask you, given your experience in investigations, and you usually come in, let's say, at the end, when a scam has occurred or fraudulent activity has occurred, why do you think these scams are just popping up all over the world? There was even one called OneCoin that I will not go into. I think it was a Bulgarian lady. Ugandans were still involved in that. So why do you think this happens from a business perspective? Why do they keep sprouting up?
Yeah, thank you, Gladys. I think to be quite fair, over the years, it's evolved. So these scam operations have evolved. With technology these days, it's easier for people to get lured into these schemes. And whether it be Ponzi schemes or pyramid schemes, it just, by the use of technology, it just goes all over the show. Why, from a business perspective, it seems that we are brought in at the end? There are various factors to that. First of all, you have regulatory appetite to try and track it themselves And so they use the internal compliance teams to try and monitor and see whether there's actually just cause to whether, in fact, a scheme is either a pyramid scheme in its nature or a Ponzi scheme, and so be it. However, what we've seen significantly, and this is widely in the US, is that you find regulators such as the SEC actually using specialized boutique services. For example, in the field of work that we do, from a compliance perspective, where we actually then track on their behalf, because there's multiple schemes of this nature. So imagine people having, from a regulatory perspective, having to do their full-time jobs and then also monitoring. It's just way too much. So when we come in from the compliance or the proactive side, it's easier to arrest a situation before it blows over. There are numerous cases where we know the matter has been arrested at the end. The Bernie Madoff scheme, which I think many of us on the call are familiar with, lasted years and years. It's sprawled over from the 80s into the 90s into the 2000s. But that had, by the time they were discovering that actually you have Bernie Madoff that sits even as a senior advisor to the SEC in the US, running an advisory advisory practice that's illegitimate. That was too late. That was 20 years past the time that this scheme had been going on. But there's supposed trust in some of these advisors. And those are some of the immediate red flags that you have when a very reputable firm is actually giving you very unreasonable returns. Is this actually true? I mean, Arthur said, is it too good to be true? And so that immediately then it should prompt the regulator to check in and confirm whether actually there's legitimacy to the trade that they have. If this is not monitored at the initial stages of certain red flags that we know in the industry are indicative of supposed scam schemes, then it's very difficult to arrest it at the end. The regulators will step in at the end to the extent possible, depending on the legislation in the specific jurisdiction. But at that time, then it's hard to get recovery of funds to those that have lost money at that time. And so I think it's very important to be quite proactive from a compliance perspective, to have experts, forensic accountants. The type of work we do very different from the type of work that we ordinarily do as auditors, like what I did in my previous life. But from a forensic accounting perspective, how do you follow the money to track and see the feasibility of the returns that are being made in respect to businesses that ought to be registered dependent on the regulator in the specific jurisdiction? I think that's where we fall short. We arrest it at the end, and by that time it's way too late. It's just become something that has defrauded many people at that time.
All right, thanks, Joyce. And Miriam, you know, every single time we sit in a room, there's always the discussion about regulation. What is the regulator doing? But the market is wide, you know, and they always say regulation follows innovation. So from your perspective as a regulator, why do you think there's been such an uprising, or why do these investment scams and fraudulent schemes keep rising up every now and then?
It's a valid question. You know, Gladys, we have what we call a submarine mentality. When people hear of a good deal, they don't tell anyone. They also don't tell us, the regulator, you know, they hear of their thing and it's such a big deal. And it's, you know, even the person calling them will tell you it's for only you, you're special, and people get excited, and then they become like a submarine, and they go to these secretive offices, and they are assuming that the person is regulated. So if I look at some of the complaints we've had at the Capital Markets Authority, we've had, for example, complaints where someone is told, invest in my company. When the company lists on the stock exchange, you'll get back your profits and all these amazing things. Can you imagine that? When the company lists on the stock exchange, you know?
That's ambitious.
Very ambitious, imagine, and someone puts their money there. Then there are others who are told that you invest in this, and then we are going to give you certain percent monthly interest. Monthly interest, and people put their money in. Now, most people just realize when they've been burnt. That's why I'm saying we have a submarine mentality. When we think something is so good, we go into it, we don't tell anybody, we don't check. Capital Markets Authority has a website, there are phone numbers, the list of licensees are on the website, but there are very few people who have been conned who will say, oh, and I checked on the CMA website. Oh, and I called the supervision team at CMA. People don't do that. So I think that it's just a culture of trusting. You know, you trust the person who has introduced you. The one who has also been conned is the one you're trusting. We typically don't get help from professionals. And I like what Mr. Yeko was saying at the beginning of the video, that if you need help, go to a professional. Not if you need help, go to your friend who you were with in Makerere. No. You go to a professional. So I think those are some of the things that we're seeing as regulators.
Mm-hmm. True, definitely. I mean, the fact that we all trust, I think it's social proof. We published an article earlier this week, just a bit of research that has been done, why investment scams take root. And I think it will be posted again in the chat just for people who would like to look at that again. But it's so true. We trust the people in our circles more than we trust the regulator. Maybe we feel the regulator is too far away from us and is not accessible. And so maybe this is even a call to CMA to start having a bit more of these engagements, just to help people start to recognize. Which leads me into my next question, really. How can I identify a con? And I know that's one of the questions that our audience has and we keep getting. So I'll start with you, Miriam. Given that scams happen in a number of ways, what do these scams and schemes have in common? What should raise those red flags for investors? How can we identify a scam before even getting involved in one?
Yeah. I like what Arthur said. Arthur said, if it's too good to be true, it's too good. There's a time I was part of an investment club, and they came to me and they said, oh, we are going to put our savings in X investment. And I said, okay, so what do they charge us, the fees? And the person said, oh, there are no fees. I really laughed. I said, oh, so you think
how do they make their money?
Yeah, you think this is a charity. I mean, that's a big red flag. Do you think that's your grandfather's business or your grandmother's business? You really think someone is going to do all that work and multiply your money and not charge you a fee? So the little subtle things, when you ask people, what do they invest in? I don't know, but they make good returns. That's exactly what happened in the Bernie Madoff scandal. All these wealthy people were giving their money to Madoff, a lot of them from the Jewish society. And whenever people would ask Madoff about the investment, he would say, you know what? Actually, you take your money. Because he was not investing it. He stopped investing their money
on a bank account
in 1990, okay? This thing was discovered in 2008. He stopped investing. So if someone cannot explain to you in very simple terms, I got your money, I put it in a treasury bill, this is the rate of interest. If you can't understand it and there's no track record of where the investment is really going, then you need to look into it deeper and say, oh my gosh, maybe this is a scam. Thank you, Gladys.
Wow.
True. So true, Miriam. Arthur, now that, I mean, we'd say you've burnt your fingers a couple of times, and maybe you have quite a number of friends as well. So what would you tell them to look out for over and above what Miriam has said?
On top of what Miriam has said, aggressive marketing is one of the things. I think like AIM Global, you would wonder how they even get your phone numbers. Then week in, week out, you're getting messages, you're even getting calls from your friends, and they are pushing you, the urgency, and they're telling you the importance. Then on top of that, they also sell you a story. So they would sell us stories of Lamborghinis, of, nice cars, nice houses. You look at the guy and even the suit and shoe don't even really match, but he's there giving you very big rhetoric and telling you, please come and join us. Telling you, I'm at this level, I'm a manager. If all these people are above you or below you, then you'll be able to get this amount of money. And then another thing is that there's always no clarity. And this just substantiates the point that Miriam has said. There is no clarity, they sound ambiguous. I think that is really the word I would say. They really sound ambiguous. You can't point to anything at all. That is kind of clear. For example, with Zeno, we know that they will invest in money markets, okay, in bonds, in the regional markets as well, the domestic equities. It's quite clear. We know where the money is going. So those are some of the things that I think would stand out as red flags. Aggressive marketing. They're selling you hope, and then there is no clarity. Basically, the things are very ambiguous.
Great, thanks, Arthur. And so I've picked out there's no clear way that they make money or what they're investing in. There's also that aggressive marketing, there's a certain sense of urgency that is also, there's even almost formal, because now they keep giving you that pressure. And then I think there's also something around exclusivity. I think for AIM Global, when I had a story, they called someone and said, out of your class of 140, you have been selected. So that made her feel very special. This is her in first year with her pocket money, and they target first years during the first few weeks, with her pocket money, and she's being told, you out of 140 people, you special child of God have been selected to come. And when she got to the room, she said when she got to the office, there were like 1,000 people. So she didn't know how special she was after that. But when the guy told them about the planes and of course the Lamborghinis, she could see her future. It was bright. And you have to leave. You have to leave when you have deposited some money as well. So that sense of urgency, this thing is going to go away. So sometimes I think as investors or for all opportunities, we just need to take some time and pause, press pause. The more pressure they give you, just drag it along for a little bit. But then again, desperation could cause you. So just understand how desperate you are at that point. Joyce, how would someone go around? I mean, you've got experience across Africa, Nigeria, South Africa. How would someone just know that this may be a con?
Yeah, thanks, Gladys. And yeah, indeed. Naturally, and I think I was saying this to you when I posted this on my LinkedIn, I had my contacts in Nigeria immediately say, this is very relevant for our market. And so I do understand. I spent the last 6 months permanently working in Nigeria. And as you'd imagine, whilst I take care of all of Africa, most of my work naturally is in Nigeria, for the reasons that are obvious to all from our fraud and corruption perspective. I bundle up red flags in 3 categories. The first one is behavioral. The second one is statistical. The third one is organizational. From a behavioral perspective, you'll know an immediate red flag when there's that pestering that my fellow panelists have been talking about. The reason why is that these schemes know that they have a limited time to operate. They know there is no longevity. And so they'll want to move as quickly to get as much mass as possible for them to pull out as quickly as they can when it all starts collapsing. And so that aggressiveness, you'll know from an individual basis, but then it's widespread. That's in relation to a Ponzi scheme. In relation to a pyramid scheme, and please just beg me to, let me beg for a second just to differentiate that too. With a Ponzi scheme, you have people putting in their investments in terms of cash investment into what is hopefully going to multiply this investment. Now, from a statistical perspective, if it is highly lucrative in terms of your return on investment, that should immediately be a red flag. Miriam talked about a 10%. In some cases, they even go as far as 25%, saying, they can give you returns of that high. And they'll even say to you, for example, in 3 months, you'll get this much. If you invest past the 3 months, you get a higher interest rate, pass, trying to lure you in, to incentivize you to not just invest yourself, but then also encourage others to invest in you. Why it's very difficult to spot it, and this brings me to the organizational perspective, is that you'll also find instances where these businesses conduct themselves in very lavish offices. The offices are lavish. The people that are presenting the deals to you are coming off as very lavish, looking very good. They're obviously trying to give this impression that, look at me, I've invested and this is how much I've made. The scam that I was telling you, I almost fell victim to, was actually a Ugandan friend of mine. She came from Uganda. She came to visit in Johannesburg, and she was at pains to explain to me how I need to invest in this, in this, what is now being investigated as a pyramid scheme. And maybe some of you are familiar with it, and I'm not sure how many have got that update in relation to the investigation. It's now categorized as a suspected pyramid scheme. It's World Ventures. And you see people posting banners of you should be here, you should be here, and it looks amazing. So from an organizational perspective, you are drawn to want to say, oh my God, I want to sleep in these 5-star hotels, I want to travel out, I want to be part of this. World Ventures since died, and it's now under investigation. The South African regulators have brought a serious claim against World Ventures through the Financial Services Bureau to investigate World Ventures as what is being considered as a suspected pyramid scheme. Now, what they lie you in with is not just put in $100 as your monthly membership fee, and this is going to give you access to then be able to be part of these discounted trips and, stay in these luxurious hotels. And my friend, oh my God, she was having all these pictures, you see her where, and she's had all her girlfriends rally up and be with her, and you want to be part of this. But when I kept thinking through it, there's that drive, there's almost a pressure to say, no, but then just invite. I think Gladys, one of our friends, even actually that of, was also led into this. Just invite who, and then it becomes a bulk number of you. In South Africa, they've estimated over 20,000 people that were part of World Ventures. And then one day it just all goes bust. And then you almost then now start saying, how to recover. So I put in the $100. But then as I thought about it more, I was thinking, but what is in it for me? If I don't travel all year, for example, my schedule is crazy, as you know it. If I don't travel all year, how do I then recoup? No, but then what you've done for them is that you brought in more and more people, because that's the way the business grows. So that's the nature of the pyramid scheme. A Ponzi scheme is even more difficult to detect if it's that. But these 3 categories should guide you: the behavioral, the statistical, the organizational. If you're looking at it from a business perspective, what is unconventional about it? What is not looking like a Zeno? Right? Are these guys registered with the regulators? In which case in Uganda, it's CMA. Are they registered? And if they're registered, can you check in with CMA to confirm the legitimacy? And then go and do your further homework in terms of the investment profiles that they're trying to expose you. So where are they investing your money? In South Africa, we have Liberty. Liberty will give you a breakdown of your portfolio account. It's going into this area, into that area, into that area. You don't have that, you don't have much in there. So I think these are some of the red flags that people need to look out for and just think twice before getting caught up in these schemes.
Thanks, Joyce. And yes, I love to travel. So definitely I was one of those who had sleepless nights about World Ventures because it just looked so cheap. But I was like, how much is a ticket? How much is accommodation? The maths was not mathing, to be honest. It really, really wasn't. And that was a red flag. And I had FOMO. I really had FOMO, but I just, as always, I said, I'll wait it out. The issue about regulation, and I see many of the people who are participating here asking about, there've been organizations that have been regulated, but they turn out to be scams. And I would actually, at this point, I will plead with the Capital Markets Authority to have more sessions to let people know how protected, first, how difficult it is to get a license from Capital Markets Authority. We have to renew licenses every year. And for you to carry that license, there's a lot that has gone into audit, checking fit and proper. For example, I have to submit quite a bit of information to the CMA for them to consider me fit and proper to be part of Zeno, to be part of the Zeno management team. So whenever you hear that a company is regulated, there's some checks and balances. There's some checks that have been done for you already. That's the first thing. So the CMA, I think, has a role to play in just letting people know what does the CMA do when it is licensing these firms, for example, when it is setting up unit trusts. How are people protected? And as a regulator, I think then you'll see people starting to share a bit more about the schemes that they are involved in and the things that they're considering as well. Because they're quite a number. Even we at Zeno, when we're meeting our clients, we get to find out that, oh, so this exists and that exists. But it's just to keep the conversation going and to know what's actually happening, vitu kwa ground, what Kenyans say on the ground, what's happening, So thank you all for sharing that on identifying the con. So now that someone has identified that this may be a scheme or just has a few red flags, how can you protect yourself? I know you've more or less hinted on it. Arthur, I'm sure you keep getting these. I mean, you offer personal financial advice. So what do you tell people who come to you? How do you tell them to keep, yes, they've seen the red flags, but what are the actual actions that they can take to protect themselves from these schemes?
Thank you, Gladys. There are two main things I want to point out, and it's based on what Joyce has said. One of the key things is to always research. And in researching, you have to ask the authorities, meaning you have to know the right place to get information from. People like relying so much on the testimonies of other people. And this is where you have to avoid anything that limits your ability to consult or takes away, your time to think. You've just told us that we should pause and think. So that's very important. In pausing and thinking, it means someone will have to go and ask the right questions and do their research, because we are better off. We're better off safe than sorry. So many people have been in a sorry state just because they did not take that 1 minute or that one extra time to ask the right question or go to the right place where they can do research. For example, just going to the CMA website alone, that can help. Many times when I've told people that Zeno is a good platform to invest, they say, no, that is a scam, that is a scam. But I did a small video trying to show them from the website, this is licensed. Just try and tell them that this is the right place to invest. Then the other thing that someone needs to do, and of course also people need to know that there is nothing like quick money. And in regards to that, someone has to be skeptic. People have thrown away skepticism, and yet it is helpful in very many times. For example, your friend will come and say, you know what, you could join this, and we are not knowing that they're actually also naive. It's good to question the interest of someone who's selling you, those unclear investments. And we have to stay away from whatever does not make sense. Let me just substantiate on this point. While I was doing my master's, I think it was 2018 or 2019, I asked my director to allow me to do a simulation on the IT staff at the university. And while doing that, I wanted to find out how cyber alert they were, to find out if maybe these guys are too smart, They cannot just click on any link that comes their way. So I sent out fake links on email and also on their WhatsApp, messages. And I made sure that the message was socially engineered. At that time, Makerere University, the main building, had gotten burnt. So I engineered a message around that event, because that is what scammers do. They also like using events to try and do whatever they want to do. So I engineered a message, and I even walked to every person I scammed and told them, have you seen this message that has come? Please click the link and then we see what's happening. Now, what happened is that all the people I did this simulation in clicked that link, and I harvested their passwords. So to me, that showed me that people don't pay attention. They just go for the loud message and forget the body of the message. And in such moments, you're actually scammed there and then. Then lastly, to just build on what I said a few minutes ago, is that always there are emotions at play. I think because of desperation, we have seen that emotions have gotten the best of us. I think I tweeted this week, France Talon said that curiosity has led people to many scams. Those are some of the few things I would say in regards to this bit. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Arthur. Miriam, at an institutional level, because a lot of these scams actually impact people within a company as well. What can they do? What can they actually do to curb the destructive nature and for it to just spread out into the environment? What can we do at an institutional level to prevent people getting duped?
Okay, thank you, Gladys. I think first, education. Capital Markets Authority does public education. We partner with the industry, just like we've partnered with Zeno to do this webinar, for instance, because we believe that the more educated you become, the better you are as an investor. You're able to appreciate risk, you're able to appreciate products. So Capital Markets Authority is always available to go to institutions to provide information on securities that are listed on our exchanges, on products that are out there that are regulated in our market. So the first thing is we need to know that the regulator is available to provide this education at no cost to institutions. So empower the staff. Do you know how sad it is when someone loses their salary? How are they going to work next week? So you really have to invest in education. The other one is investor alerts. Whenever we have a player that's operating illegally in the market, we normally put out an investor alert. Go to the CMA website, see if these alerts are there. At an international level, we are members of IASCO. IASCO is the International Organization of Securities Commissions. Now, IASCO has a website, okay, that has an investor alert portal. So whenever a regulator from any of the IASCO countries, which are more than 150 countries in the world, whenever they have come across a pyramid scheme, they've investigated it, they've confirmed it, they put it on the website. Can you imagine? So some of these things can be avoided by even just going to the investor alert portal of IASCO. So I really want to encourage engagement, education. Don't assume anybody's regulated. Get as much investor information out there. Let us get away from these two mentalities we have in Uganda. One is the herd mentality. Everyone is doing it, so I'm going to do it. You're not everybody, okay? You do your thing. You grow your money slowly but consistently. So let's get out of the herd mentality. The other mentality we have is we also don't read. And that's what Arthur is also alluding to. You just see captions and then you get so excited by a caption. You should be here and then you're there, So I feel like people need to start to take an interest. The articles that Zeno is talking about, the research notes that come out from the industry, what's posted to alert investors. Let us really take take caution. There's a time CMA put out a notice regarding a particular football club that was offering shares to the public many years ago. And I remember very well, we had a radio conversation in Luganda and English, and people had the nerve to call us, to call and say, CMA, leave us alone. That's our football club. If we want to put our money there, let us put it there. Now look at that mentality. What do we call that really, Gladys? What can I call that? So as a regulator, we always try to provide people with information. Let us guard and protect the resources that we have for the sake of our families and making sure we have a secure financial future.
Thank you, Miriam. So engagement and education. And again, I will call out to the regulator. We have a lot of the information that we share. I understand that we study in English. English is the first language in Uganda. Most of us communicate that way. But from our interactions with various clients, it is becoming very apparent that we need to find a way to communicate in vernacular. Because and it's hard to explain financial concepts in Luganda, right? Like, how do you say compounding? Like, there's certain things. But we need to find a way. We really need to find a way, because decisions about money are rarely rational. Yeah. They're rarely rational. Money is very emotional. It's an emotive subject. And when things are emotional, you go back to native, you go back to vernacular. If you speak to me in my language, it may stick more than all these fancy Banovasomanyo. This is too much English, So I think as an industry, we now need to make a conscious effort to start communicating, engaging, and educating in vernacular. We will reach more people. And we will actually help more people understand what we are trying to do. All right. So now that we know how to protect ourselves, it's unfortunate that there are people who have fallen victim already. And I think I really want to this will go straight to Joyce, because I just like the term investigation. It makes me think of all these detective, it just makes it seem so fancy. And exciting, though I don't know how exciting forensic accounting is. I'm sure it is to you. But what steps can victims take once they suspect or discover that they have been scammed? From an investigative angle, what is it that they can do? Joyce, this is for you.
Thank you. So investigation is not as fancy as it sounds. It's actually a very high pressure job. And I think for us, ours is simple. Ours is follow the money. Ours is as simple as that. And if I could sum up this session, I would say, if you have any suspicion that there is any red flag that you have in relation to an investment scheme, follow the money. It's as simple as try to understand, when you put your money into an investment company, where does the money go? For us as forensic accountants, when we get engaged by either regulators or if a company now, like Miriam was saying, they say, oh, wait until we list. The funny thing is that some of these actually do list, right? And a good example is the instance that we had in South Africa. We all know of the stories of Marcus Giuste and Steinhoff that actually went on to list, and we didn't capture it. We didn't capture it as South Africa regulators. We only came to find out once the German regulators in Germany put a sincere red flag. And this is a company that had been audited for years and years by a Big Four. I won't mention names here, but if you do a bit of research, you'll see Steinhoff had been audited by a Big Four accounting firm. Again, it goes to what we're talking about, the front of legitimacy of business transactions. I like what Miriam said about what lessons they've learned from our peers in other markets. and then taking those lessons and putting them into what we do on a day-to-day practice. Now, from control risk, we are fortunate that we lucratively work across the globe. And so I have the fortunate, or sometimes unfortunate, unfortunate pleasure of working places like Nigeria, and then you work in the US where there's highly regulation, and then in areas in Nigeria where the regulation so and so is very fraud and corrupt, and it's very it's very high risk. But one of the things that I think you need to do immediately is follow the money. Where are your investments going? What are they going towards? And I would challenge anyone that's trying to be led into some investment to say to the person that is being persuasive towards them investing, to say, okay, thank you very much. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to discuss with CMA. I will get back to you. The minute you try to do that, you'll see an immediate hesitance because they do not want to be investigated. Now, if you follow the Bernie Madoff case, Bernie Madoff immediately when his investors would say, I am going to follow through and try and query the investments, his immediate response was, no, it's fine. We'll close your investment here, cash out, you can leave tomorrow. And that creates one of two scenarios. Either you feel like you must stay investing because actually someone is now trying to withdraw the lucrative investment that you've got out of putting your money into a venture, or you feel like, oh no, I'm being unreasonable. Let me just stay. So you need to look out for those signs. And if someone is trying to put across exclusivity and you can just take your money if you want to, almost that arrogance that you don't need to get from legitimate businesses, you need to take that as a red flag and keep away from that. So I'll just really sum it up by A, follow the money, and then the three categories that I talked about, and try and establish where the red flags are and report. Report. We've seen that in some cases, the regulators actually do not follow through on the reports. The Bernie Madoff one is a classic one. They didn't follow the many reports. In fact, even the Steinhoff case, there were many reports. They even reported to board members. The chairperson of the board was even informed. But because there's this cloud of very creative accounting, which we as forensic accountants now unpack and deal with, no one was really following through on what this could be. So I think we need to be very cautious and report where we can. With many reports coming through, that puts pressure on regulators to act. But it also helps you affirm your position as to whether to continue to invest or not.
All right, Joyce. So as an investigator, and I'm really, because many people say they've put their money in a scheme or in a fraudulent scheme, it has gone bust. If you were to be hired to follow through on any of these schemes or scams, what kind of evidence would you be looking for? What would someone have to present or show to build a case?
So one of the most unfortunate things about this kind of investigations is that actually when participants are signing up, they sign into the scheme. So from a liability perspective, it's you as an individual that has already confirmed that you give your consent to be part of the scheme. Now, for an individual as per se, you'd need to show all the entire trail of what you submitted in order to be part of that scheme. That would really be very limited in terms of you pursuing a case against the company. You'd have more support if you went through the regulator, actually, because from a regulatory perspective, they can hold the investment to account. A, check whether they're registered. B, check whether they were acting in good faith in terms of their business transactions. And then from a forensic accounting point of view, it's easy for us to work through the regulators to support that process. But from an individual perspective, if you're going to hire an investigation firm to follow through, the muscle that you have to convict is limited. It's not as great as the muscle that you'd have if the regulator brings that firm to account. And whether then, as per statutory evidence, whether then their business has been conducted in good faith or not. So the requisites that are required in terms of the evidential threshold are really determined by the regulator, depending on what has been dictated for by the jurisdiction. But then for you as an individual, you need to show your entire trail of what was told, when you were told, what you submitted, who engaged you, what they engaged you with, what their offer was, and what you submitted in relation to you joining that scheme. Can use that. Take it to Miriam, Madam Miriam and her team and say, guys, this is what's happened. You report, you empower them to investigate. Because then if they don't have that information, then it's difficult for them again to move as well as they would like to move.
Right. Thanks, Joyce. That's quite insightful, because most people will just go around complaining, they took my money, but they never really know, what do I do then? How do I build a case? And what role can, for example, CMA play? And I just like, before we go into the Q&A session now, I would like to ask Miriam, so once people find out they've been scammed and they approach CMA, what do you require from them? What do they do? How do you engage with them going forward?
Okay. Gladys, as we approach this, allow me to put a rider. Prevention is better than cure, okay? If you're on this call, please, please, please prevent. Do all the things we are telling you to do. The reason I'm saying this is because we have a very lengthy process of trying to recover money once there's a scam. We have to work with the police. We have to get you to come. We have to organize interviews with police. We have to look at your documentation. Most people are so excited they've invested in the scam, they even forget where they kept the receipt. They're so happy for their investment.
Or they didn't get any receipts either.
Exactly, Mm-hmm. So we have to go through all that information, and then you have to become a complainant. Now, this is where it also gets tricky for some people, because they don't want to be complainants. They don't want to appear in court. They don't want to go through that process. And yet we require under the law, because most of these are criminal prosecutions. Okay, so if it's a criminal prosecution, you have to be a complainant. Once we have done that, we have to submit it to the police. They review the evidence, they arrest the person, then they have to be charged. Now, the struggle we've been having at the Capital Markets Authority is, remember, all these perpetrators have a right to bail. They have a right to bail. So you find someone, I was looking, for example, at a complainant, a single individual put 140 million shillings into a scam. They were told that put your money, we will invest it for you in capital markets. 140 million, an individual. Now you've put your 140 million there. By the time we go through the prosecution process, these guys go to court. They've scammed 140 million, one individual. If they do that to 10 individuals, how much money is that? When they go to court, getting bail is a very easy thing. So once they get bail, they flee from the country. By the time we go into the process of even challenging a bail application, the person has already left. So a lot of the complaints we have at the CMA, these companies are briefcase companies, they flee jurisdiction. It's very expensive to pursue. So mine is, let's prevent this. Let's prevent this by asking the right questions, by getting clarification. And if you permit me, Gladys, I just wanted to explain to our audience, I've been seeing so many of the questions coming in, and I wanted to explain to them the unique role of a person we call a custodian. Everyone is worried about their money, their money, their money, their money. When you were in university, there was that person called a custodian who would keep the boys out, okay, of the girls' hall, okay? When it comes to capital markets, when it comes to Zeno, anyone that has been licensed under the collective investment schemes framework, we have a custodian. The custodian is a financial institution. That financial institution is licensed by Capital Markets Authority to ensure that as Zeno operates, the money, if you're invested in money markets, the securities, if you're in an equity funds, the debt securities, that they actually exist, okay? So this advancement in regulation happened after the Robert Maxwell scandal in the UK, where a lot of people lost money to pension funds, to the Mirror Group pension fund. And so the reform in pensions led to the unique role of a custodian. So don't go about thinking Gladys has your money because you sent it on mobile money. She didn't have it. So what happens? People are saying, okay, what happens if Zeno goes bust, if they leave? Do you think they're carrying your money with you? No, they are not. Your money is invested in financial instruments, and the person responsible is a custodian that is a bank and is licensed. So if Zeno decided, for whatever reason, that they're exiting, CMA would make sure that all the investors are either paid their money or transferred. And we've had that before in the market, where for some reason a player decides they're moving on, they're ceasing the business, they are transferred to another player because those assets are with the custodian. So let us just have a very good understanding of the regulatory framework, and let us be at peace. There's someone who posted, Bumi, I haven't been sleeping. Can you please sleep? Okay? These are regulated entities. CMA inspects them, checks them, we license custodians. Please, from today, you sleep, okay? You sleep. That's why you have regulators.
Wow.
Thank you, Miriam. Arthur, do you sleep?
I do sleep soundly. I really do sleep soundly.
All right, so
Because
I'd like us
I've
to
taken time to educate myself.
Yes. So the regulator is out here to protect the industry. Capital Markets Authority has to ensure that the capital markets develop in Uganda, that people can invest in Uganda safely, that businesses can borrow from investors, you and I, that the government can also borrow from us through treasury bills and treasury bonds, that this industry, capital markets, is actually, it's a part of the financial markets, which is supposed to bring together investing, domestic investing and foreign investing from everyone, not just the well-to-do, but every person, every Ugandan. So it is in the Capital Markets Authority, one, to protect investors. That's why they keep doing all the checks on us, the fund managers. They have set up a structure. We have so much, so the trustee, we have a trustee who is our police. We have the custodian who holds our investors' assets and receives the investors' funds. As Zeno, we do not actually, we cannot even make an investment decision. Our investment instructions have to go to the custodian, who then buys the assets and holds them for us. We make the investment decisions, but never do we hold the cash. So this question keeps coming up again and again and again. And I think I will go back to the regulator that we need to spend some time this year just explaining what the protection is around unit trusts, collective investment schemes. A custodian is licensed, a trustee is licensed. And there was an interesting question here that all these businesses, or some of these businesses, get registered. And so I'm trying to explain that there's a difference. All businesses can get registered so that you have a business certificate, but there's certain activities that you can not undertake if you are not licensed to. For example, banking. You need to get a banking license to operate as a bank. Just because I open today and I start taking money and lending you money, that doesn't make me a bank. I haven't been licensed, and there are no protections around that. So the same thing with fund managers, investment advisors. There is a license that has to be given for you to have the authority to take on that to undertake that activity of investment management or investment advisory. So let's quickly jump into the questions. And some of these I'll throw to our panelists. We may not have expert advice specifically here. So we will come from the point of some of these businesses. Are they regulated or not? We'll keep it at that. You know, for example, is crowd farming or crowd real estate a scam? Capital Chicken has poultry where people can invest in such a farm. Miriam, I'd like to throw that to you.
No, I really don't know about the poultry.
So therein lies the question.
But it's worth looking into. I mean, I think that the important thing is to go to someone who is in that particular business and try to understand what the business model around poultry is. So capital markets is really limited to financial instruments and products within the capital markets industry.
Exactly.
But I think that since you've raised it, anyone on the forum who knows more about it can go ahead and let you know more about it. Yeah.
I know Arthur may have a few insights on Capital Chicken. Has anyone approached you?
Not yet. No one has approached me. The thing is that these things keep coming up in new ways. So it sounds very new, but it sounds like a scam.
So look, the thing about investing as well, there's certain jurisdictions or areas which can be fully regulated. Not everything can be regulated, unfortunately. And businesses keep cropping up left, right, and center. As an individual, it is best to do your own due diligence as well and understand where can you do those checks, as Arthur said. How do you find out, get more information for yourself for some of these? If there's any doubt in your mind and you can't find any place where it is regulated, where, you know, track record, hold off, give it some time, be patient. Money is not made overnight. Let it be, just be patient. If that opportunity goes, there'll always be another one, especially if you can't find your money later. But I won't say that we know much about capital markets here. Emily, that was responding to you. And I see Joseph Mawa has a very interesting question for Miriam. And it is about, from an industry player to a regulator, how do you manage conflict of interest? And how do you objectively regulate the players whom you have been part of to ensure Ugandans are not scammed? I think it's a pretty valid question, but maybe Miriam, you can also give a bit of your background on the work that you had done, how you started off at CMA, went into the market to better understand it, and went back to CMA. So I'll hand that to you.
Thank you, Gladys. I'll respond to that together with a question. Someone asked a question, how can we be sure Miriam really works for CMA? So you have quite an interesting audience out there.
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Very engaged.
They have been banned.
Yes. So I'm a lawyer by profession, and I worked for Capital Markets Authority for about 12 years. At the time I left the authority around 2016, I was director for market supervision. Now, one of my interests is in the area of pensions. So I had an amazing opportunity to work for Alexander Forbes, which later was renamed Zamara. That was a very good experience for me because it's important for us to regulate not only with head knowledge, but really understand what's happening. So when Gladys tells you Stanbic is a custodian, I completely understand what she's talking about because Zamara has an umbrella fund. We do the things, we were doing administration, we had trustees, you know, the experience is just amazing. So that experience was for about 3 years as the COO, an acting managing director. And then I returned to the Capital Markets Authority as the head of legal. Being a lawyer, that was a good opportunity to go back as Director Legal and Board Affairs. So right now, I'm Director Legal and Board Affairs. I had a very good understanding of the industry. It helped me to appreciate the amount of work people like Gladys do, and to appreciate the efforts when it comes to investor education, because as a regulator, we must cooperate with the industry if we are to grow the capital markets. And I feel like coming from an industry perspective has been very good for me going back into the authority. Also, being a lawyer, I had been responsible for a lot of laws and regulations. So it's nice to go and be tested on the same laws you're passing, yeah? And then you really appreciate. So we're actually in the process of even reviewing and reforming some of those laws. That said, Capital Markets Authority is an institution. It's governed by a board of directors. We report to the Ministry of Finance. So there's a governance structure that also assists, and that, of course, deals with any conflicts of interest that may come up. So that's what I would say. For the person who really wants to be sure, I work for CMA. CMA is at the Uganda Business Financial Center. It's in Baskerville, Kololo. It's on the same building with Uganda Registration Services Bureau and Uganda Investment Authority. We are on the 8th floor. You come to my office. You're welcome. Come ask for Miriam Musaali, and then you see me in the office. I think that's the best I can say.
And have tea. And also check the website. You will find her photo and everything there. All right. Thank you, Miriam. I'm just trying to pick out a few more questions here that could be answered by our panelists. So Arthur, I'd like to direct this one to you. Someone says, an anonymous attendee says, most times people run for investment scams because of the returns. They find that this attendee attended a seminar in Chambogo University about the regulated investment schemes in Uganda. When they asked about the return, the interest rate of 11% annually is very low, making people go for the ones that have high return. Arthur, perhaps you could respond to this.
Thank you. This is where maybe I put on my personal finance hat. And there's something called the money blueprint. When I was growing up, my dad never ever taught me about money, except saying that, you know what, it's not plucked from trees. And you find many of us get to interact with money when we start earning it, and we do not know how to, keep it, how to earn it, how to keep it, how to multiply it. And over time, as we've been speaking, we say anything too good to be true is something that should make you, first take a back seat so that you can actually appreciate. Because if anyone has been really, appreciating the financial education that is out there, or even following the trends, you'll get to know that many of the investment schemes, I should say like Zeno or any other out there, are going to probably give you 10 to 11 or 12%. If you're lucky, you'll probably reach 13%. So it's not really about, I think, the interest rate now. For example, Zeno will tell you, invest maybe say for a 5-year term. If you have a goal of say 5 years, 10 years, it's about, how long maybe you can stay in the investment and leverage the opportunity of compound interest. Now, young people are going to want, to get something on the go. And I think when I was starting out to invest with Zeno, I asked Brian Ongodia the same questions. How much am I going to get on interest, say, per month? And he clearly explained to me. And that is when I started appreciating more, that it was not just about getting quick money. It's about building wealth over time. And these are some of the things I've taught some of the young people to leverage, doing it while they're young. And to avoid thinking that, you're going to go and get something that gives you 20%. If it's 20%, just as the regulators have said, you might end up burning your fingers. So I think it is wise to just sit back and appreciate and educate yourself and know that, these right schemes are going to give you this, and you work within those means, unless maybe someone is going to come up with their own licensed firm to do that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Joyce, I'd like to bring you in on this question from Luyumba. Where do scam and Ponzi schemes get licenses to operate businesses in the country? Because most of them seduce clients by presenting some documents to prove that they're legit, but actually not, and many fall victims. And the worst thing, most are engineered by foreign operators.
Yeah, so first of all, most Ponzi schemes are not registered. And that's why we say go check on the CMA website in Uganda, for Uganda's case, for example. Pyramid schemes, on the other hand, is in most cases, you'll find that they're registered, but they disguise the nature in which they conduct their business operations. And as the attendant has rightly stated, you'll find that usually it will be picked up by markets that are more advanced than ours. For example, World Ventures, if we go back to the World Ventures example, it was picked up by the Norwegians. And subsequently, the South African government then said, no, we actually also need to investigate World Ventures. The Norwegians investigated and then found that it was characteristic of a pyramid scheme, and they banned it. They appealed immediately. Within that week that the ruling came out, they appealed. When they appealed, again, it failed on appeal by the Supreme Court. And when it failed, then the South African government also chose to investigate. So now it's being investigated by actually 3 regulators in South Africa. Imagine. So it's not just being looked at by the Financial Services Board, it's also being looked at by the South Africa Reserve Bank, and they're all tying it to the National Consumers Act. So you find that for pyramid schemes, there's likelihood that the business will be registered, but actually the management of the business is not fully disclosed in relation to the nature in which the business operates. But with Ponzi schemes, in most instances, you'll find that they're not registered as per se, and that's how you'll know the difference. And again, back to the differences between the two, you'll find that with Ponzi schemes, what they're asking you for is to put in a cash investment. And like it's been talked about at length today, the returns will be substantially higher. And they'll try to pressure you to try and invest as quickly as possible because, again, longevity is not guaranteed. Where the businesses in terms of a Ponzi scheme, and usually it falls under advisory business service, investment advisory business services, you'll find that in where there's longevity, there's a masking of the operation, similar to what we saw in the Madoff case, where it's a mask. And because this individual is a high net worth individual, very well respected, regulators almost do not believe that what's being done is constitutive of a Ponzi scheme. So I think just in short, I can summarize in that. What I think is a problematic area that we haven't got time to cover today is cryptocurrency, which has most recently become an area that I think Arthur will appreciate from a cybersecurity perspective is also quite problematic. Bitcoin and investment thereof, and how it's being sort of promoted to be almost a very lucrative form of investment and that sort of thing from a reserve bank or central bank in Uganda, as it's known as. That I think there's also a bit of issue, but again, to regulate that is a bit difficult. And we've seen that even in advanced markets where the regulatory of cryptocurrency is also a very big challenge. But that's an area I think we'll need to unpack in another session, but that's also quite problematic. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Miriam, I think someone needs to come to your office for tea, Mr. Joseph Mawa. I think he's a good candidate for tea. So he's asking, do you have a portal to check ownership of these investment firms? I am not referring to just a list of licensed investment firms, but detailed information like ownership, board of governors, etc. I remember inquiring about the membership of the board of Zeno, At this point, I'd like to point out, we introduced them at the AGM. We will introduce them again at the next AGM, but never got a satisfactory response. For all we know, some of these firms are owned by well-connected politicians siphoning investor money. Joseph,
All
actually,
right.
first come to the Zeno office for tea before going to Miriam's. We need to make peace.
Okay, so CME normally will carry out a due diligence. Remember, every company that is registered in Uganda has to file annual returns with the registrar of companies. When you file your annual returns, you file information on your directors, who they are, your shareholding. You're supposed to put your annual financial statements. So the reason licenses are renewed by the CMA on an annual basis is to also check whether they're actually filing returns with the Registrar of Companies. Now, the Registrar of Companies has now become, I think, very automated. And I think you can go to their website and even check some of that information. But the due diligence is always done. We also require all the directors to do a fit and proper assessment. This fit and proper assessment even involves going to Interpol. So before someone gets a license, we even have to get a certificate of good conduct from Interpol to certify that we are not dealing with criminals. That's why it's very important for you to deal with someone who is regulated, because the Capital Markets Authority has to do that due diligence. Under the law, the Capital Markets Authority has a continuous duty to make sure that the operators in the market continue to be fit and proper. So all those assessments are done, but if you want to do your own due diligence, you can check with Uganda Registration Services Bureau.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam. We are coming to a close. For any other questions, if they're burning questions, you could send them. We'll collect them and send you private responses as well. But as we are coming to a close now, I would like to, first of all, thank our panelists for taking the time to engage and share all this knowledge with us. We will post their contact details for you in the chat, for those who want to reach out to them. And I'd like to invite all of you to follow Zeno on our Twitter. We'll be doing a lot more of this, sharing a bit more information. We intend to have monthly webinars that will just keep speaking about topical issues in the capital markets, inviting experienced and well-versed subject matter experts to have similar engagements as we have had this evening. Follow us on Twitter, that's at Zeno Uganda. We are also on Instagram, we engage there as well. You may connect with us on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Our website is www.myzeno.com, and you can book a one-on-one session with any one of the Zeno investment advisors. I would really like us to just summarize at this point in time, parting shots from each of our panelists. What would you like our audience to walk away with? And what would you want them to evangelize after this session? I will start with Arthur.
Thank you, Gladys. As I read through one of the scams, BLQ, one of the things that was mentioned by the scammers was that Ugandans, we have scammed you and we shall come back with new tricks. And then also read, and they said that while they were writing the report, they said that, while they used Telegram to reach out to their clients, this shows how technology has come to aid quite a number of things. But at some point, they started hiding their identity. And that's one of the key things scammers will always do. So I want to tell people that scams are real and new ones will keep coming up with old or new tricks. But this is the catchline. It's been written that we should not consult what is it called? Do not consult a coward about war, because a coward cannot tell you about war. Do not consult a lazy person about a big task or even work. Do not consult a miser about generosity, or the merciless about kindness, and continuously. But if it comes to things like investments, ensure you consult the right people. Is it Zeno? Is it Capital Markets Authority? Is it any other regulator out there? A friend of mine told me, as I conclude, that he got a call from a fraudster saying that he had won money. And he ran to his dad, and his dad told him, you know what? Did you participate in any of the games to say that you won money? If you did not, he said, remain at home. And then he said, at that point, that's when he said that my parents taught me that there's nothing like quick money. You have to work for it. If I haven't worked for it, then it is not mine. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Arthur. We have really appreciated your insights from an investment, as an investor and personal financial coach or advisor. Joyce, parting shots for our audience. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep it very short and sweet. Red flags, follow the money, report, or threaten to report, to pick up on the nervousness that these potential investment firms have. And always be on the lookout for get rich quick schemes. Research, do your Google searches, do as much questioning within your peer community as well as you possibly can, and go to Miriam's office for tea.
Miriam, you have carried the day. You have carried the day. I'm sure people here are just saying, look, Capital Markets Authority, we need more. We need more tea. I hope you have a huge, you have a lounge and you're ready with mandazi. Please give your parting shots to our audience.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gladys. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Joyce. My parting shots is really to let all of us know this market is ours, okay? It's ours. This is our country. The capital markets is your market for you to be able to invest and create true financial wealth, okay? The way we are going to do that is together. We want to build confidence in the capital markets. The best way we can do that is when you keep in touch with us. It's when you raise your complaints, when you see red flags, even if you're not sure and you call our supervision department. We've put the email there. We've put the name of the person who handles complaints there. If we can work together, we will rid our market of scams. The Ministry of Finance has put together a task force on Ponzi schemes, and they are trying to see what can we do for Uganda. So if the market is ours, let's get involved in building confidence, in building wealth, and the Capital Markets Authority is there to serve you, is there to educate you, and that's why they pay us. So make sure you make the most of the Capital Markets Authority. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you, Joyce. And thank you, Arthur, for participating in this very, very informative and insightful discussion. I do hope that for all those who have attended and those who will watch the recording later, this information will help you learn how to decipher or just to distinguish what is a proper opportunity and a legitimate opportunity, and what could be a fraudulent one. Guard your money, guard yourself as well, because the emotional turbulence that you go through after you've been scammed, it takes a while to recover from that. And you can prevent that just by arming yourself with information and pausing to think. So this year at Zeno, we are encouraging you to invest wisely. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, and thank you all for joining. Have a great, great evening. Take care and God bless you.
God bless you too.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.